Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. After the customary post-budget address of the Finance Minister to the Central Board of Directors of the RBI, explaining to them the key priorities of the Government of India and the main primary and key initiatives announced by her in the budget, the Finance Minister is reported to have got on to the main and real agenda of the Government of India with the RBI Governor, which is funds to be given by the RBI to the government. It is reported that the Finance Minister asked the RBI Governor to secure and put in place every possible effort such as to ensure that the RBI pays a higher dividend to the Government of India in the forthcoming financial year 21-22. Thereafter, top officers of the Finance Ministry advised the RBI officers and directors to diversify the foreign exchange investments of the country into higher interest and income bearing investments so as to enhance the Reserve Bank's income, thereafter resulting in a better, higher dividend to be paid by the RBI to the Government of India. The officers of the Finance Ministry are reported to have asked the RBI to aggressively deploy the foreign exchange reserves of India in order to add to the profits of the RBI and thus add to the dividend that the RBI would give to the Government of India. Interestingly, this advice to deploy in higher income bearing investments comes at a time when there is a slump, a dip in global interest rates, because of which it will be a big challenge to be able to deploy funds safely and get a higher income. But that is what the advice has been of the top officers of the Finance Ministry to the top officers of the RBI. The fact of the matter is that the Reserve Bank of India has been the most dependable cash cow of the government at a time when tax revenues and receipts of the government have been falling, when economic growth in the country has been receding. Growth has been falling, so has been the government's income. But during this time, the most dependable receipt according to us has been dividend paid by the RBI to the Government of India. In the financial years 2016 and 2017, the Reserve Bank paid a dividend of about 66,000 crores per year to the Government of India. This dividend dipped to about 40,600 crores in financial year 2018. But in 2019, the dividend shot up to a stunning 1.76 lakh crores. Of this, 1.26 lakh crores was dividend paid, and the rest was an amount transferred by the RBI to the Government of India, being surplus reserves not wanted by it according to the Jalan panel recommendations, thus giving in 2019 a huge sum of 1.76 lakh crores to a cash-strapped government. In the financial year 2020, the figure is about 57,000 crores, and in the financial year 2021, it is expected to be about 60,000 crores. The government's budgeted dividend from the RBI for the coming financial year is about 55,510 crores, and the Finance Minister has asked the RBI to put in every possible effort such that the amount given is more than the budgeted figure of 55,510 crores. The dividend that the Reserve Bank pays to the government is certainly high. It is a huge number. But the fact of the matter is that the dividend payment by the Reserve Bank to the government in the last 2 years has not been meeting the budgeted target of the government. It has been falling short of the target. In financial year 2020, the budgeted dividend income of the government from the Reserve Bank was to the tune of 1.48 lakh crores. The actual payment was just about 57,128 crores. In financial year 2021, the expected dividend income of the Government of India from RBI is expected to be 60,000 crores. The budgeted figure is 89,600 crores, thus showing a shortfall in this financial year also. That explains why the Finance Minister persuaded the RBI Governor to secure and put in every possible initiative so as to ensure that the Reserve Bank meets its dividend target for the coming financial year 2022, or perhaps even gives dividend beyond this target to the Government of India. It is very easy to give this advice. It is very easy to exhort the RBI Governor to ensure that the dividend target is met. But the reality is something else. The reality is that the income of the Reserve Bank of India is purely governed by market forces and its income earnings are not truly in its control. The RBI may be the monetary and the banking regulator of the country, but when it comes to its income, even its own income is governed by market forces. The primary income of the RBI comes by way of lending to banks, which is the repo interest that it gets. The other income comes by way of interest and gains on foreign and domestic investments. It also earns income or losses on account of foreign exchange transactions in domestic markets, and the Reserve Bank also makes profits by way of printing of currency notes. All these are governed by market forces. Take the case of the Reserve Bank's earnings for financial year 2021. In the financial year 2021, it has been a reverse repo interest and not repo interest. In this year, the banks have deposited surplus liquidity funds with the RBI to an average level of 7 lakh crores, and it is the RBI which has incurred interest expenditure on these funds which it has received from the banks, and thus it has not earned repo interest. It has actually paid reverse repo interest, which does not translate into any income for the RBI. It is in this financial year 2021 that global interest rates have dipped on account of surplus liquidity in global markets, and thus Reserve Bank's income from foreign exchange investments abroad are also going to be moderated and lower. It is again in this year that digital transactions in the country have gone up. Because of that, there has been a lower demand for new currency notes, and thus even the Reserve Bank's profits on account of printing of currency notes is going to be moderated. That explains why in the last 2 years the Reserve Bank's income has dipped. In financial year 2019, the Reserve Bank's gross income was 1.93 lakh crores. In financial year 2020, it has dipped to 1.49 lakh crores, and in financial year 2021, it is expected to be even lower. That explains why the finance minister has been eagerly nudging the RBI to ensure that investments are diversified in such a way that somehow the Reserve Bank is able to meet its dividend declaration targets to the government of India. This advice of the top babus of the finance ministry to the Reserve Bank, asking it to adopt a more aggressive approach in the matter of investing India's forex reserves and get higher income on its investments, would mean that the RBI would need to change its conservative approach to investing India's precious forex reserves. That, according to us, is risky. Moreover, we think that the Reserve Bank does not even have the bandwidth to be able to change its conservative policies, and that's because of the composition of forex reserves of India. Why do we think that this bandwidth is not there, and why do we think that this entire approach would be risky and is not warranted? The first factor is that let us look into the composition of India's forex reserves. India may have huge forex reserves of $585 billion today, but these reserves have not been built because of export surpluses of the country over the years. These reserves have been built because of debt and FDI inflows into the country, and both these monies are returnable, are refundable. They have to be paid back at some point of time. It is not India's earnings which have built these reserves. After all, India has had a negative current account balance all these years. It is on account of borrowings, it is on account of FDI inflows that we are seeing such a massive forex reserve of the country today. But as we said, this surplus does not belong to us. It will have to be repaid. As of 30th June 2020, the external debt of India was to the tune of $545 billion. That's the amount that India needs to repay by way of loans taken by the government and by the private sector and others. Of this huge debt of $545 billion, 44% was short-term debt, technically repayable within a year's time. That's the kind of composition of India's forex reserves. Where is the flexibility to invest these reserves, to invest this money which does not belong to us in any other asset which is more risk prone and which compromises on safety, just because the finance ministry thinks that they can be invested in more profitable avenues? We think that the bandwidth to do so is just not there. The second reason is that if India were to invest its forex reserves into any other security or any other asset by converting the foreign currency into something else, then it is going to expose India to massive foreign exchange volatility. If the dollar is converted to any other currency and the dollar shoots up, that means India is going to face massive losses. And again, we do not have the bandwidth to be able to absorb such losses. At a time when the global economy is uncertain, at a time when currency volatility is imminent, it would be certainly wrong, it would be imprudent to convert India's dollar and euro assets into any other currency and expose the country to forex risks. So we think even that option is not available. Thus, what is available is to invest in conservative Yankee bonds where the dollar remains safe even though it gives us a lower return. We also need to remember that the day this stimulus globally stops, the day oil prices go up, the day India's imports come back to their normal levels, there is bound to be again a pressure on India's forex reserves. And that again denies any kind of flexibility or options to the government of India, to the Reserve Bank of India, to invest its funds, to invest the forex reserves into any security which gives a high return and compromises safety in any measure. We think these are the risks that get exposed and they cannot be incurred, and that is why the hands of the RBI get tied. It will have to continue to invest India's forex reserves primarily into Yankee bonds, into US government bonds, into dollar and euro denominated investments such that we are not exposed to risks. The larger picture according to us is that in case we want better returns on forex resources of the country, then we will need to change the very character of these forex resources. We will need to change the composition of these forex resources, which is they must be built out of export surpluses and not out of debt and not out of FDI inflows in the country, which finally have to go back. That means if we want to do that, we will need to enhance India's productive capacity and export competence. Until that is not done, according to us, Reserve Bank of India is not going to get the option to be able to invest in higher interest bearing investments. And I don't think that is what the finance ministry officials had in mind when they asked the RBI to invest in higher interest bearing bonds. That approach compromises prudence, and that is not a privilege available to the Indian nation at this moment. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Hello everyone. HW News English is 2 years old now. When we started this venture, we promised ourselves one thing, that news should remain free, because right to know is the right of every Indian. But to keep news free for everyone, we need support from some of you. And thus we have rolled out membership on our YouTube channel HW News English. But mind you, the membership is completely voluntary. The programs that we were doing earlier, that we are doing now, will continue to remain free. First level is a basic level. Here, you can be our supporter by paying Rs 199 per month. This membership gives you certain perks and benefits. The perks include unique badges in front of your name, a live show from Mr. Sujit Nair and from Mr. Akhilesh Bhargava per month for our members. You can also vote in some exclusive members-only polls. Now the second level is Super Supporter. Here you can be our Super Supporter by paying Rs 3,999 per month. This membership will include every perk that comes with basic level. Additionally, our Super Supporters can be a part of a WhatsApp group where we can have discussions and suggestions on various topics. The second perk includes a gift pack with our merchandise. And the third perk is a Google Meet with Mr. Sujit Nair, where you can join the meet and ask your questions to Mr. Nair face to face. Lastly, if you like, we would give a shout out to our super supporters in our programs. So, hope to see you soon with our badges.